At 2 a.m., she cut down my American flag with a hacksaw. She thought nobody saw her, but the neighborhood was watching, and so were the cops. It was 2:03 a.m. when I heard the sound. A sharp, scraping noise outside my window, cutting through the silence of the night. I pulled on my boots, grabbed my old Marine Corps jacket, and stepped out onto the porch. That's when I saw her. Linda, HOA President, red robe, hair a mess, hands gripping a hacksaw, teeth clenched in the porch light. She was cutting down my flagpole, the flag I raised for my brother, who never came home from Iraq. The flag that stood in front of my house for 17 years, waving quietly in the morning breeze, reminding me why I worked, why I paid my taxes, why I stayed. Linda didn't care. She muttered to herself, "Too tall, not in compliance," I warned him. But I had the permits. I had the HOA guidelines printed and stapled to my fridge. I had every right to have that flag. Yet here she was, sawing it down at 2 a.m., thinking no one would see. I felt the anger rise in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "Linda," I called out. She froze. Her head turned slowly, eyes wide in the porch light, sweat shining on her forehead. "You're trespassing," I said, stepping closer. She dropped the hacksaw, fumbling for her phone. "Stay back. I'm calling 911. She screamed. Imagine that. She was cutting down my property, and she was the one calling 911. But she didn't know something important. The neighbor across the street, Tom, had already called the police. And as Linda stood there, shaking, trying to tell the dispatcher I was threatening her, the blue and red lights rolled up the street. 2 officers stepped out, hands on their belts. Linda turned to them, shouting, "Arrest him. He's violent, he's threatening me, he's a danger." The younger officer, maybe 30, glanced at me, then at the fallen flag lying on the grass. He saw the hacksaw. He saw Linda in her robe, breathing heavy while died. He saw me, standing on my property, quiet, hands open. "Ma'am," the officer said calmly, "step back." Linda sputtered, but he, step back," the officer repeated. That's when Tom and a few other neighbors started to gather on the sidewalks, phones recording, faces grim. They had seen it all. Linda's screams echoed down the street as she tried to spin the story, but the evidence was clear. And as the police moved closer, she realized it wasn't me they were walking toward, it was her. The lights from the police cruisers painted the street in pulses of red and blue, flickering across the faces of my neighbors who had gathered in their pajamas and hoodies, clutching coffee cups, holding on to each other. Linda's voice was shrill in the cold night air. "He's a threat. He's dangerous. I'm the HOA president. You have to listen to me." But the officer, a calm man with tired eyes, who had probably seen too many of these HOA dramas, just shook his head. He pointed to the flagpole on the ground, the bent metal glinting in the cruiser lights, the flag itself still folded and caught on the base, dirty now, but still there. "Is this yours, sir?" he asked me. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, officer. It's been there for 17 years. Linda tried to cut in, waving her hands, her voice cracking. "It's a violation. He's..." The other officer, a young woman with a firm jawline, stepped forward and held up a hand. "Ma'am, we need you to step aside." And in that moment, I saw Linda's face fall. The fight drained from her eyes for a split second, replaced by something else, fear, because it wasn't going her way this time. The officer turned to me again. "Do you have proof of your permits, sir?" I stepped back toward my porch, where my wife stood, holding a folder we had kept ready for exactly this moment. She handed it to me, and I handed it to the officer, our hands brushing for a moment, a small warmth in the cold air. As the officer flipped through the papers under the porch light, Linda kept shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no." Finally, the officer looked up. "You're within your rights, sir," he said, handing the papers back. A hush fell over the crowd. Linda took a step back, her robe slipping off one shoulder, her hair wild, her breathing heavy. She turned, trying to leave, but the young officer stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, we're going to need to talk to you." Her eyes widened. "What? No. I was protecting the HOA. He's the problem." The officer sighed softly, almost sadly. "You damaged private property. You trespassed. We have witnesses." Tom, standing in the front of the crowd, raised his phone, showing it recording. Mrs. Rodriguez, in her slippers, stepped forward. "I saw it all," she said, her voice trembling with age but strong with truth. "You cut it down, Linda. You threatened him. You woke the whole street." Linda's lips trembled, her hands lifting in a pleading gesture. "Please, I was just trying to keep order." But no one was with her anymore. The officers took her gently by the arms, one on each side. As they walked her toward the cruiser, the silence was heavy, but it was not empty. It was filled with the quiet strength of neighbors standing together, of people who had come out of their homes in the middle of the night to protect what was right. Linda's eyes met mine as they opened the back door of the cruiser. For a moment, I saw the weight of her choices hit her. She looked away, the door shut with a soft but final click. And as the cruiser pulled away, Tom stepped beside me, clapping a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder. "Mike, you did good," he said, his eyes glistening under the streetlights. I looked at the flag, crumpled on the ground, and felt a tightness in my chest. Not anger, not victory, just the heavy, quiet love for a country that lets you stand up, even when someone tries to tear you down. And the love for a neighborhood that, when tested, stood up with you. 3 weeks later, I walked into that courthouse with my wife by my side. She squeezed my hand as we passed through the cold metal detectors, the hum of the building settling around us like a weight. I wasn't a stranger to courtrooms. I'd testified before, sat on jury duty, watched people lie, watched people break. But this time this was personal. Linda sat at the front, her red jacket replaced with a plain gray one, her hair pulled back, her eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. She wouldn't look at me. Our neighbors sat behind us, quiet but strong, like an unspoken promise that I wasn't alone. Tom, Mrs. Rodriguez, even young Benny from down the street, sitting with his father, wearing a small flag pin on his collar. The judge entered, robe sweeping, the room rising, then sitting. He was a tall man, older, with deep lines around his eyes, and a voice that didn't need a microphone to command the room. He looked down at the papers before him. Case of Michael Foster versus the Homeowners Association, and Linda Peterson. Linda flinched when her name was called. I took a slow breath, my heart pounding, but I kept my eyes steady. This was about the principle, about standing up when someone thinks they can tear you down because they feel powerful. The lawyer representing Linda started to speak, painting her as a woman overwhelmed by her duties, that she was only trying to enforce the HOA guidelines. But the judge held up a hand. Did she have the right to enter the plaintiff's property without permission at 2 in the morning? The lawyer's mouth opened, but no words came. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Foster, do you have your permits?" I stood, my knees stiff but steady, and handed the papers over, just like I did that night. He scanned them, nodded, and placed them down. "Everything appears in order," he said. Linda's lawyer tried to speak again, but the judge lifted his gaze, and his voice softened, almost like a father talking to a child. "Ms. Peterson, do you understand what you did?" Linda finally looked up, her lips trembling, tears brimming in her eyes. I thought I was protecting the community." The judge leaned forward. "You do not protect a community by tearing down what they love. You do not protect a community by trespassing, destroying property, and creating fear." Linda began to sob quietly, her shoulders shaking, the sound echoing in the room. The judge sighed. This court orders Ms. Peterson and the HOA to pay for the damages, legal fees, and to issue a formal apology to Mr. Foster. He paused, letting the weight of the words fill the room. And Ms. Peterson, consider this a lesson. Being part of a community means protecting each other's rights, not your own power. The gavel came down with a soft but firm thud. And just like that, it was over. As we walked out of the courtroom, the sun was bright outside, warming the cold that had settled in my bones for weeks. Neighbors clapped me on the back, offered smiles, handshakes. Tom grinned about time. My wife leaned in, whispering, "You did it." I looked up at the sky, took a breath, and felt a weight lift off my chest. Not because it was about winning against Linda, but because it was about reminding everyone that standing up, even when it's hard, matters. It was about the flag, yes, but it was about more than that. It was about the right to sit on your porch, watch the sunrise, and know you're free. A week after the court's decision, I stood in my front yard, the morning sun just beginning to warm the dew on the grass. Tom was there, coffee in hand. Mrs. Rodriguez held a small American flag, the kind you wave at parades, her eyes shining with quiet pride. Benny, the little boy with the flag pin, clutched his father's hand, watching with wide, curious eyes. And my wife stood beside me, her hand slipping into mine, her warmth grounding me as the moment settled around us. The new flagpole stood tall, glinting in the soft breeze, stronger than the last one, anchored deeper, made to last. I pulled the flag out, still neatly folded, the fabric soft but sturdy, the stars and stripes bright against the morning light. As I clipped it to the pole, I felt the weight of everything that had happened. The fear that Linda would keep getting away with it. The anger at being made to feel small on my own property. The exhaustion of standing up again and again for what should have been obvious, but also the pride of neighbors who didn't look away. The quiet courage of community standing together. The simple, undeniable power of doing what's right. I looked around, taking in the small crowd that had gathered on the sidewalks, coffee cups in hand, sleepy smiles on their faces, but they were there. Because they knew it wasn't just about a flag. It was about respect. About the freedom to live in peace, to honor what matters, to protect each other when someone tries to bring darkness into a quiet street. "Ready?" Tom asked softly. I nodded, and with that, I pulled the rope, raising the flag into the air. It flapped softly at first, then caught the breeze, rising higher, unfolding, catching the sunlight until it was fully free, waving proudly against the blue sky. A soft cheer rose from the neighbors. Mrs. Rodriguez wiped a tear. Benny let out a small, excited wow. Tom placed a hand on my shoulder, steady, reassuring. My wife leaned her head against me, whispering, he'd be proud. She meant my brother, and I believed her. The flag snapped in the breeze, crisp and strong, and for a moment everything was quiet. A bird sang from the oak tree across the street. The wind rustled the leaves, and the flag waved, reminding us that sometimes standing up is hard, but it's worth it. As the neighbors began to drift back to their homes, Tom stayed a moment longer. "You know," he said, glancing at the flag, "it's not just the flag, Mike. It's what it stands for." I nodded, feeling the tightness in my chest, but it was a good tightness, the kind that reminds you you're alive, and you've done something that matters. "It's about standing up when it counts," I said. Tom smiled, raising his coffee cup in a quiet toast, and letting them know we won't be pushed around. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the rooftops, the flag still waved, catching the last golden rays of the day. And I sat on my porch, my wife beside me, the air cool, the neighborhood quiet once more. I closed my eyes, letting the breeze wash over me, and felt the peace of knowing. We stood up. We protected what mattered. We showed Linda, and anyone else who would try, that this neighborhood wasn't just a collection of houses. It was a community, and we would protect it. Together.